We're on. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, adequate notice of this April the 10th, 2014 meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting written notice and the agenda of this meeting on the bulletin board in the Municipal Building, 1000 Route 10, Township of Hanover, by hand delivering, mailing, or faxing such notice and agenda to the following newspapers: Morris County's Daily Record, the Star Ledger, Hanover Eagle, and by filing same with the Township Clerk. I have a roll call.
Yes, sir. Committeeman Gallagher.
Here.
Committeeman Faramosca.
Here.
Committeeman Bruno.
Here.
Committeeman Capola.
Here.
And Mayor Francioli.
Here.
5 members in attendance, sir.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, would you all please rise, those that may, and join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Okay, at this time, Township Committee, I'd like to entertain a motion to open to the public.
So moved.
Second. And seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. If anyone would like to address the Township Committee at this time, they can do so from the podium, giving us your name and address for the record. Or you want to address it in public, or you want to address this in conference session?
Whatever's best for...
Okay, well, Howie's got the floor now anyway.
Howard Olson, 93 Griffith Drive, Whippany. I'd like to make another, I'd like to make another, I'm brain dead at this point right now. What I'd like to do is ask the Township Committee if we can continue or start to work on the path that I had mentioned about.
When you say Patriots Path?
No.
Which path?
The path that we could possibly put in and finish it up around Bee Meadow Pond.
The pond?
Yeah.
Um,
I brought this to attention
was the
a while ago,
yeah.
and I'd like to know whether or not, I took a walk around there, and finally, Jerry, after 6 years, we finally got the culvert finished. And that's going to be done. And you have the walkway on the, if you're looking at the pond, on the right-hand side that follows the road.
By the road, yeah.
Goes up in behind the football field. Now, over that, we could add to that and make it a walking path all the way around the pond. There's almost a pathway there now.
Right.
And I'm sure with the capabilities that we have with our recreation department, Bill, and working along with Brian, I'm sure that we could probably do it with our own personnel, nothing to do with EPA, and all it would really take would be quarry process, the same as we have on the other side. And I was just hoping and praying that maybe we could get this done, so that way there, when people come up and watch football games or bring their kids to the football games up there, or even swimming, they have a place to walk around, and there's nothing nicer than to walk around a pond.
Oh, it's a nice amenity.
Yeah, and you have one on that side of Route 10, which is actually Whippany Park. They use that all the way around, and it's...
Oh, the high school, the track?
Yeah, the track, or they also have a blacktop that goes all the way
Right,
around.
Right.
And my other thing that I'd like to bring up is, I know I had mentioned this once before, but is there anything that we as a township can do about our wonderful eyesore on Route 10 next to Bogies? We had too many eyesores going through Whippany Village. We don't need to air out our laundry by having something like that sitting there so that everybody goes through Hanover, because everybody hears how great Hanover is. And they say, yeah, they got the old dilapidated house right there on Route 10. I'd like to know if there's anything that we as a township committee can do.
We
That's all.
have, not oddly enough, that was on our agenda in conference session, and property in question publicly will be known as the Hardy property. That's the house next to Bogey's there that you're talking about. It's in terrible disrepair. And we've got several of those houses. Luckily, not all of them are on Route 10. But there are several things that are happening at this particular time. One is regards private landowners are talking about that particular property right now. And for the longest time, that property fell into the control of the heirs because the owners became incapacitated, or was there a death in that too as well, the Hardy property? Regardless. The township is anxious to see some private sector peoples come to some terms with that property and acquire it and knock it down. And that might be imminent. If it is not, then we've explored some avenues that the township can take. We've got to be, we're all concerned with the same eyesores along Route 10. We truly are. I think everybody sits on this township committee is. But we also walk a very fine line with the rights of private landowners. And, when does a piece of property become a blight? When does it become a safety issue? When does it become a detriment to the township? And when it does, and we define it as such, what action can we take? I just can't go on your property and start nailing boards up on your windows. Howie, you know that.
Yes, sir.
But we are exploring that avenue, that if we can. We had similar properties where we had to go on the property and take action, and we did. And we're prepared to do that on this particular property too. There's some other ones that are a problem to us. Further down Route 10 by the firehouse. In that flood zone down there, we've got some properties, some are still being used, some are vacated. They all have to be dealt with. And it's on the township committee's, top of the township committee's agenda. The administrator brought it up again tonight for what we're gonna do. And we discussed it with council, who just had to leave us a little while ago. So bear with us, and we're gonna see if we can get some things going. Going back to the pond for a second, Jerry, what's this, where did we leave that matter of the trails?
What Mr. Olson's proposing is a nature trail around the ponds, the
Around
three
the
ponds.
ponds, yeah.
Right now, there's an informal trail, and that's what he was referring to. I think what Mr. Olson's proposing is that we formalize it, and it could conceivably be connected or to the connectivity plan that we've adopted. But right now, there is no, formal budget item
There's
to
no
create the
budgeted or
trail.
formal proposal
No,
before us
no,
for that particular. Is it a nature trail? Is it a finished surface right now, or is it just
Well, that's something we've discussed. Right now, it's just
cinders or?
No, I think it's informal that some people like to, walk around the ponds, and they've created kind of like a goat path. There really is no formal delineation. There's no surface
I mean,
established.
if township committee, and I understand we have another plan on the drawing board here with
Exactly.
connectivity.
Yes.
But if the township wanted to go ahead and undertake the work, are there tree removals? Is there?
There might be, but certainly you want to minimize that type of activity, but you want to make sure that it's wide enough and safe enough, and you have a
Right.
stable surface
Right.
to allow, walkers or strollers.
Most of it, when I walked it today, most of it is basically dead leaves, brush, underbrush.
Is it clear?
Yeah, you're gonna do one of these jobs. You're not gonna do a straight job. You're gonna
Yeah, it's going to
work your way right around the trees and everything else like that, and it worked out perfect.
Jerry, can you?
We'll have
work
to
with
take a
Bob?
look
Can
at
you-
it. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna resolve that tonight, but I think we can take a look at it and see what's feasible.
Yeah,
That's all.
I think it would be a project that maybe the Board of Recreation could maybe look at, the commissioners.
Can I suggest that you and Bob get together and maybe
Absolutely.
review this, take a look at this, if it's something that's within the scope of what we can do, and finish up even though we want to go further with it, let's say, if it's something that we can get on the, for active use right now,
Okay.
let's see what we
Mr.
can
Mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a look at it. It's not gonna be imminent. We have a lot of work going on in the fields. Our playing fields took a beating this winter, as we know. It was,
know that.
the winter from, from Antarctica, really, with, all the snow and ice and rain. So we're trying to get the fields ready for Little League, soccer, lacrosse, everything else we have going on in the spring. But certainly it's something that, Jerry and Brian Ferran and I can take a look at. We'll see whether it's something, a project we can take on with our own resources or something we might have to get some outside help.
That's fair.
We could also use the open space fund, too.
Time.
Go.
Gene Pinadella, 38 Sunset Drive. There was a time, if you could show that that was going to be eventually part of the Patriots' path,
Yes.
there was a time that the county had agreed that they would clear that, pave it with
Oh, we
gravel or
we
stone.
entered into a contract with them at the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that, since it eventually will become part of the connectivity path, that might be a way to get it done early. You may be
You
able to
know,
get the county to want to come in
Gene,
and do that along
contract-
with other
that
things.
contract probably goes back 10, 12 years now.
Yeah, I remember it.
I mean,
Since
I don't even know.
Yes, you did.
If the ink faded,
I
I mean.
don't know that it's still in force. Probably
I
tell you
think
more.
we're gonna,
But that's an avenue you can explore. Somebody can talk to the county. They've been anxious to do a lot of work with us.
Yeah.
According to what Art and his group has done with them.
well, ultimately,
That might be a way to get this done early.
let's say ultimately, but I mean, if there's something that we can do between Recreation and Public Works right now to just make it, usable, then what the heck? Let's, we can always come back on and improve it,
But if the county will come in and do it, it won't cost us anything, and they have the resources.
worth a shot. Okay.
The only thing that I would say, Jerry, is, pardon me, this is going to Jerry. When is the culvert supposed to,
Yeah, the culvert replacement, the construction work is planned for August,
August?
yes.
All right, so if we're looking at the,
Probably the fall of this year if we were
Yeah.
going to install do this nature trail project, yeah.
yeah, and I understand, Mr. Bruno, that we are working very diligently on the fields. They are taking a beating from all this rain and snow and everything else like that, so it was just something to put in the mind, because we're always looking to do something for the people of Hanover Township. And I think this is a cheap way out, and it's a great thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No doubt about it.
Thank
No-
you.
No doubt about it. Thanks, Howie. You know,
Bartlett Fonte, 29 Appleton Way. I know you're going to be talking to Jerry about the funding program. If we're doing that later, we'll do it later. If you want to do it now, we could do it now.
well,
didn't know
we're
when you
probably
want-
going to take it back up in conferences, because it's going to be a discussion with the engineer as to what this grant is all about, where we are with it, the filings that we have to have in by a certain date. I think it's May 15th.
May 15th, right. May
And so that, it's going to be more of a discussion-like thing. So-
Maybe while Mr. Linfanti has the floor, though, you can just give us a quick update, overview on where we are and
Sure.
apprise the
Actually,
committee.
our agenda tonight was going to be talking about this program. So when I heard you were going to have it on the agenda, like, you know what, we might as well just hear what's going on from you guys. And if you need anything from us, we're here to tell you whatever we need to tell you. But I think Jerry has been working with Dave. You have all the costs from Dave. We kind of have we kind of know what this project is going to cost, and it's a soup to nuts cost. It's somewhere, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere around $650,000. However, those costs include improvements to Hanover Avenue, which probably is a longer-term issue. The costs also include paving from the community gardens to Woodmont. That's an issue that I think we're going to try to resolve with the county, because the county has expressed an interest in maybe doing that paving for us, or something along those lines. So I
County's
believe,
indicated they might have funding?
well, now you're talking about something that I don't know anything about. I'm
Oh.
kind of reporting what,
I
and
got
Jerry,
into
you can
a-
correct me if
I
I'm
got
wrong.
into a nasty area there. Okay, go ahead.
No, I understand. That was a question. That was certainly an issue. But I think Dave is supposed to have a meeting with them
I don't know what date he was meeting with them, but he was
Soon?
gonna, yes.
soon. So where we are right now is we're looking to see what kind of funding we're going to have for Phase 1. The grant, which we think is a phenomenal project, and I don't know if Jerry got a chance to talk to Ed Farmer yet. He's the grants coordinator, I put in touch with Jerry. That if we're lucky enough to get some decent funding, it's probably going to be for Phase 2 and the longer-term projects from Phase 1, like East Hanover Avenue and some of the other major improvements. So what we need is to have some kind of meeting or some kind of schedule to get Phase 1 funded. And that's one of the things we wanted to talk to you folks
But
about tonight.
we can't move forward. The subject at hand tonight is going to be this grant, and you're right, that's forget Phase 1, Phase 2. That's grant money against this entire project. Phase 1, we've been talking to some corporates and private sector, as you know. But the township can't move forward in those kinds of discussions without having information about what the potential costs, what are we looking
Yeah,
for?
you have it.
We have it.
Well, to correct Art, I haven't received it yet.
Oh, okay, because I called James.
It might be imminent, it might be in the mail. I
Oh,
haven't-
okay,
I
I'll
haven't-
call, because I
Yeah.
talked to James today, and I said, does Jerry have all, as soon as you get the numbers, I know he's had numbers around 650 forever.
Okay.
But, so I'll call them tomorrow, and I'll make sure you get them right away, because what's, and I'm sure Jerry has told everyone, we're ready to go to bid in a couple months, and go to construction shortly thereafter. It's not a huge, the project's not a huge
You're gonna
lift.
Be able to bid in a couple of months?
Well, we have the consultant working on the plans and putting the back end, so I haven't received those yet,
Mazel
the plans
tov.
to review, but I think they're probably, I would say, 80% done.
So that's why we were saying like 2 months, right?
Right, yeah.
So, and the project's not a heavy lift. We can do a lot fairly quickly. So that's why I think, well, the grant money that you're going to be
Art,
talking about later on is good.
Who is we've got recreation department involved, we've got the environment involved, I mean, I'm talking about connectivity. We've got all the stakeholders, as I say, involved. Who's the point person on this? I sound a little naive on this, but I gotta ask, who's the, I know Gene's involved, and brings his experience. All right, Art's the point person, okay.
I imagine Gene just pointed at me. Is that what happened?
He just pointed to you.
Did he point to me?
Yeah,
I
yes,
thought,
he did.
I felt it.
But I guess the reason I ask that is this. This is a project that we're all salivating over. It's so close. And for some of us, it's 30-odd years or more that we've been on this, okay? So we want it to happen. But my point is that I need an ongoing report to the Township Committee in some fashion of the combined efforts of your group. What actions you've taken to such and such a date, where we are, with cost analysis, where we are with engineering, where are we in the design. I think most of us here on the Township Committee, I know Bob just asked a question, he wanted an update, a very legit question. So if we could be, we're gonna go on with this discussion tonight on the grant, but in the meantime, this is an aside, if we could get a memo on an ongoing basis, whether it's monthly or so forth, that would be a great help to us to monitor it with you, to move it along with you.
That's great. That's fine. We'll do that.
Can do?
No
Okay.
problem.
All
No
right, but
problem.
meanwhile, we'll pick this discussion up in conference where it will just be an open discussion with the engineer.
That's
Yes?
great.
Yes?
That's great.
Okay.
So what you need from us, aside from the memo, but you need those costs done.
Yeah,
And I'll make sure that gets done.
I do need
and
those
that-
costs.
Yeah, and I guess at that point, I think what our committee's looking to see is how can we schedule talking about funding, once we get the costs for you, how can we schedule funding, if we're gonna earmark money from open space, if we're gonna go to corporate sponsors, if we're gonna get a couple more grants. I think Joe and Barbara from Land Conservancy, Barbara's been talking about a couple of $1,000 grants here or there. I don't know if that's been applied for or what Barbara's doing on that end, but getting funding in place for Phase 1 is probably the most imminent issue right now.
And the most assured one, I might tell you at this point, because of some of the commitments we've gotten early on already. So in other words, now the only difference, and again, we're having this discussion, but we're gonna need to know more about from the Arboretum up to Widmont, up to Colloid, what improvements need to be done there, who's gonna do it, what's the cost, et cetera. And then from there, we know we're gonna go over to Crossings, and then we're gonna go down Eden Lane to Bayer,
Right,
through Central Park.
right.
Okay, well, we've got phase one, you know, up here, but we just gotta know, you know, where the pieces of money are gonna be.
Okay, and I
Good.
think Dave has that broken down segment by
Okay.
segment. You're just waiting for final numbers from him?
Yeah, I want final numbers and final plan set, or at least a plan
Okay.
set that's 90% complete, so we can do our initial review.
Okay, all right, well, the only other update I guess I can give you is, I know at EDAC I showed some concept plans or some concept designs for signage and stuff like that. We ran those by our marketing people, and they gave Dave glowing remarks on the Connect Hanover, that concept 1A. They said it was phenomenal, it fits right into what they're doing on the marketing plan, and they said, you know, if you choose, go right ahead with it. It fits perfectly with what they're,
Oh, the
with what
trails,
they're
will-
doing.
there's no doubt, the trails will be a wonderful asset to us when they're finally done. In the area of wellness, et cetera, every corporate that we talk to about it is, you know, liking it, so it's gonna be a great asset.
So other than that, that's pretty much where we are. I think you're all up to date as to where we are, and so we'll make sure we start instituting a memo system to the township committee, you know, once a month.
Keep us in the loop, and then in turn, once we review a memo like that, if we have comment, it'll go right back to you.
Great, and then I just gotta get Jerry those final costs, and I'm pretty sure he knows. I'm gonna call Dave when I leave this room. All right, great.
Thank you. Floor is still open, if anyone else like to address the committee at this time? Seeing none, hearing none, motion closed. So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Administrator?
Thank you, Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now continue with the formal agenda. First item is the approval of the Township Committee meeting minutes for the regular meeting of March 27th, and the bid reception committee meeting minutes of April 1st and April 8th.
Move to be approved.
We have a motion by Mr. Capola, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
We have the following reports that have been filed by the various departments and are available for public inspection. The first is the report of the construction official on all certificates for construction permits issued for the period February 1st through February 28th. Our property maintenance officer has submitted 2 reports, one as of the 26th of March and the second as of April the 9th. We have a project status report from the township engineer as of March 27th. Township's chief municipal finance officer, serving as the treasurer, has submitted his report of budget revenues as of March 13th. We have the report of the chief of police for all activities conducted by the police department through February 2014. And finally, the superintendent of the Public Works, Buildings and Grounds, and Park Maintenance Department has filed 2 reports. The first report is the report on all sanitation and road division activities, and the second is the division of park maintenance on all activities by the Park Maintenance Division. Once again, all those reports are available in the administrator's office for final inspection, for public inspection. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have several ordinances for public hearing and consideration of adoption. First is docketed as Ordinance 9-2014. This ordinance amends and supplements Chapter 166 of the Code, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, by providing amendments to the provisions concerning development application fees and escrow deposits. We have the proof of publication that the ordinance and the notice of introduction appeared in full in the March 20th issue of the Daily Record. The ordinance was filed with the Morris County Planning Board, and that was, we have received notification they received it, and all contiguous municipalities were also provided with copies of the ordinance. Finally, in accordance with the municipal land use law, the ordinance was submitted to the planning board for referral and recommendation. We have a letter dated April the 8th from the chairman of the planning board advising the governing body that the ordinance was reviewed by the planning board, and it recommends, based on its review on April 8th, that the ordinance be adopted. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, may we have a motion from the governing body to convene the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
So moved by Mr. Bruno and Mr. Francioli. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Is there anyone present wishing to comment on ordinance number 9-2014?
Move to close.
Seeing none, hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Capola to close
Second.
the public hearing, second by Mr. Faramasca. Roll call to close the public hearing, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Now, motion on adoption. Be it resolved that an ordinance entitled, An Ordinance of the Township Committee, amending and supplementing Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, by amending the provisions concerning development application fees and escrow deposits, be passed on final reading, and that a notice of the final passage of the ordinance be published in the April 17th issue of the Daily Record. May we have a motion
So
on
moved.
adoption? So
Second.
moved by Mr. Faramasca, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call for adoption, Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So adopted. Here are the copies. Thank you. Ordinance number 10-214. This is an ordinance that amends and supplements Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, by amending the provisions concerning site plan exemption for minor conforming developments. The ordinance and the notice of introduction were published in full in the March 20th issue of the Daily Record. The ordinance was filed with the Morris County Planning Board. We've received notice that they received it, and in accordance with the municipal land use law, we provided service to all the contiguous municipalities, both by certified and regular mail. The ordinance, in accordance with the municipal land use law, was referred to the planning board for recommendation, and at the April 8th conference meeting of the planning board reviewed ordinance number 10-14, and we have a letter from Mr. Nardone, the chairman of the planning board, that the planning board reviewed the ordinance, and it recommends that the ordinance be adopted. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, may we have a motion to convene the public
So
hearing?
moved.
So moved
Second.
by Mr. Faramasca, seconded by Mr. Bruno. On roll call for public hearing, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So moved. Anyone in chambers wishing to comment on ordinance number 10-2014?
Move to close. Second.
Seeing none, hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Capola, seconded by Mr. Faramasca to close the public hearing. On roll call to close, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Now, a motion on adoption. Be it resolved that an ordinance entitled, An Ordinance of the Township Committee, amending and supplementing Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, by amending and supplementing the provisions concerning site plan exemption for minor conforming developments, be passed on final reading, and that a notice of the final passage of the ordinance be published in the April 17th issue of the Daily Record.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Firmaska.
Second.
Second by Mr. Capola. On roll call for adoption, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Firmaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So adopted, ladies and gentlemen. Ordinance number 12-2014 on your agenda, ladies and gentlemen, amends and supplements Chapter 61 of the Code of the Township, entitled Salaries and Compensation, Personnel Policies, under Article 1 of the Code, entitled General Policy and Procedures, by adding a new section 61-36 to be entitled Direct Deposit, by requiring all full-time and part-time township employees to be compensated by direct deposit only, commencing July 1st, 2014, in accordance with a new law, Public Law 2013, Chapter 28, signed by the governor, and it'll take effect on July 1st. We have the proof of publication that the ordinance and the notice of introduction appeared in full in the April 3rd issue of the Daily Record in accordance with law. May we now have a motion to convene the public hearing?
So moved.
So
Second.
moved by Mr. Capola, seconded by Mr. Bruno. On roll call for public hearing, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone present in chambers wishing to comment on ordinance 12-2014? Seeing none, hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Capola, seconded by Mr. Faramaska to close the public hearing. On roll call to close the public hearing, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Now, a motion on adoption, be it resolved that an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover, amending and supplementing Chapter 761 of the Code of the Township, entitled entitled Salaries and Compensation, Personnel Policies, under Article 1, entitled General Policy and Procedures, by adding a new section 61-36 to be entitled Direct Deposit, by requiring all full-time and part-time township employees to be compensated by direct deposit only, commencing July 1st in accordance with Public Law 2013, Chapter 28, be passed on final reading, and that the final notice of the passage of the ordinance be published in the April 17th, 2014 issue of the Daily Record in accordance with law. May we have a motion on adoption?
Motion.
So moved by Mr. Gallagher.
Second.
Second by Mr. Faramaska. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So adopted. Okay. Now on page 2, ladies and gentlemen, ordinance number 13-14. This ordinance repeals the rank differential guide for the ranks of chief, captain, and lieutenant as described in section 61-4.1 entitled Schedule C, Police Superior Officer Salary Guide, under Chapter 61 of the Code entitled Salaries and Compensation, Personnel Policies. The reason that this portion of the code is being repealed is that there is an agreement that is being prepared for the chief, the captain, and lieutenants, and therefore, on the advice of council, this section of the code needs to be repealed to make way for the new rank differentials. May we have a motion now to convene the public hearing? So moved by Mr. Franciulli. Second by Mr. Capola. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
Is there anyone in chambers wishing to be heard concerning ordinance number 13-2014? Seeing none, hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Capola.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bruno to close the public hearing. Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
Now on adoption, be it resolved that an ordinance of the Township Committee repealing the rank differential guide for the ranks of chief, captain, and lieutenant as described under section 61-4.1 entitled Schedule C, Police Superior Officer Salary Guide, under chapter 61 of the Code of the Township entitled Salaries and Compensation, Personnel Policies, be passed on final reading, and the notice of the final passage of the ordinance be published in the April 17th issue of the Daily Record. May we now have a motion on adoption?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Bruno, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye. Busy boy.
Yes, I am. I need to wet my whistle.
Enough ink in that pen?
I don't know. To see what a,
I have to get the mayor a new pen.
see what a good cross pen can do.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, ordinance number, I'm a little out of sequence, so give me one moment, please.
15.
And and we have 15. Excuse me. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this ordinance 15-2014 repeals the salary guide for the ranks of patrolmen, detectives, and sergeants as described under section 61-4.2 entitled Salary Schedule for Patrolmen, Sergeants, and Detectives under Chapter 61 of the Code of the Township entitled Salaries and Compensation, Personnel Policies. Here again, we are awaiting a new agreement with the PBA, and on the advice of counsel, this section of the code should be repealed at this time. We have the proof of publication that the ordinance and the notice of introduction appeared in full in the April 3rd issue of the Daily Record. May we now have a motion to convene the public
So
hearing?
moved.
So moved by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. Capola and Mr. Gallagher, I believe, in unison. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
Is there anyone present wishing to comment on ordinance 15-2014? Seeing none, hearing none.
Motion to close.
We have a motion to close by
Second.
Mr. Capola, seconded by Mr. Ferramaska. On motion to close, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
Now in adoption, be it resolved that an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the Township Committee repealing the salary guide for the ranks of patrolmen, detectives, and sergeants under section 61-4.2 entitled Salary Schedule for Patrolmen, Sergeants, and Detectives under Chapter 61 of the Code entitled Salaries and Compensation, Personnel Policies be passed on final reading, and that a notice of the final passage of the ordinance be published in the April 17th issue of the Morris County Daily Record. Motion for adoption.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Bruno and Mr. Gallagher. On roll call for adoption, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Ferramaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Franciulli.
Aye.
So adopted, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, as we continue with the next portion of business, ladies and gentlemen, we now move to the introduction of ordinances. And I'll point out for the record that we can take as a consent agenda, because it will have the same public hearing dates, ordinance A and B. And the reason for that, ordinance A is a capital ordinance, Ordinance B is a land use ordinance, and we must have one meeting in between, so both ordinances would be heard for public hearing and final passage at the Township Committee meeting on May the 8th. Both ordinances will be published in full in the Morris County Daily Record in the April 17th issue. And with regard to the Land Use and Development Ordinance, that ordinance will be referred to the Planning Board as required by the Municipal Land Use Law for referral and recommendation. And the Morris County Planning Board and all contiguous municipalities will be notified on Ordinance 17-2014. So we can take ordinance number 16, 2014, and 17, 2014 as a consent agenda. Are there any questions about either ordinance? Once again, public hearing on May 8th, here in these chambers on both ordinances. We have a motion by Mr. Capola for consent agenda on ordinances 16 and 17 only. We have a second by Mr. Faramasca? Yes. On roll call for introduction of ordinances 16, 2014, and 17, 2014. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, on ordinance 18, 2014, and 19-2014, both these ordinances have a public hearing date of April 24th. So here again, items C and D can be taken as a consent agenda because the public hearing and consideration of adoption will take place at the Township Committee meeting on April the 24th, public hearing at that time, and any person wishing to be heard will be given the opportunity to be heard. Both ordinances will be published in full with the notices of introduction in the April 17th issue of the Daily Record. Are there any questions about either ordinance?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Capola on roll call for introduction for ordinances 18 and 19, 2014. Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So introduced for the record.
There you go. Have a sip.
I need it, Mayor. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, consent agenda for resolutions. And I will advise the Township Committee, unfortunately, did not have the opportunity in conference work session, that Township Attorney Fred Samrow has requested the approval of a funding agreement between the Township of Hanover and 67 Whippany investors as it relates to the work to be done on Whippany Road and Parsippany Road. And of course, that agreement would be subject to the final review and approval of the Township Attorney and the Business Administrator, but it is something that the Township Attorney feels needs to be done as part of this meeting.
Very wise.
Are there any, and that funding agreement will mean that all costs related to anything dealing with that project will be paid by 67 Whippany investors.
There'll be no burden on that project to
The
taxpayers.
taxpayers of Hanover Township.
Right.
Are there any questions by members of the Township Committee concerning any of the resolutions?
Now motion we approve them as part of the consent
Motion
agenda.
by Mr. Faramasca, including the
Amendment by
the
our
amendment.
attorney.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Capola. On roll call for approval of the resolutions as a consent agenda. Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So approved as a consent agenda, and the mayor will now use his pen. And as we continue, raffle applications also as a consent agenda. Raffle applications 2749 and 2750, Employment Horizons for Tricky Tray and 5050 Off Premise. And raffle application 2751 for St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Council 690404 for a 50/50 off-premise. And Mr. Capola will abstain on the vote dealing with St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Council 50/50.
Motion to
We
approve.
have a motion by Mr. Bruno, second by Mr., we'll take Mr. Gallagher, because you're going to abstain. By Mr. Gallagher on the raffle applications. We'll know for the record that Mr. Capola is abstaining on raffle application 2751. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And Mr. Capola,
Aye.
with the exception of 2751. Finally, the payment of bills, $6,023,584.55.
So moved.
Gotta pay
Moved
the
by
bills.
Sylvia, what are you doing
Second.
this for?
Mr. Francioli, seconded by Mr.
Gotta pay the
Faramasca.
bills.
On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
Mr. Capola.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, so approved.
How come I saw Sylvia doing this?
Mr. Esposito, no debt payments in any of those bills, correct?
debt payment.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Very good, Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, is there any other business from the Township Committee at this time?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Planning Board. Planning Board is very busy kicking off a mini master plan study for Route 10. They've been working on this in concept sessions for the past 12 months, and now we're getting to the state where we're actually going to bring in some outside experts to work with our planner to do that. For those of you who are aware, we had done something very similarly on Hanover Avenue, East Hanover Avenue, and that was instrumental on what we would say the reinvention of that whole area. So we are very eagerly awaiting to see the results of that study. Second study is Economic Development Advisory Council. They're working on the branding of Hanover Township. Hanover's been very blessed to have had some significant economic growth, and as we move forward, we're trying to make certain that we're best positioning our Hanover Township for future quality ratables. That's what we are trying to attract here. And lastly, the Township website. For those of you who have not been on it recently, highly recommend that you visit our website. It has been totally updated. It's been a fine job collectively by members of the EDAC as well as the professional staff within the township to do this, and congratulations go out to them. They worked very hard on this, and I think you will find it to be very, very informative and easy to navigate. That concludes my report.
Oh, John, thank you. Thank you very much. Regarding the website, and Tom, I'll interrupt, I'll give you the floor in a second. Many of our other municipal agencies, fire department as an example, et cetera, will be linked through that website. So we're in the process of still shaking it out, as we say, a little bit, but you'll be able to go to our hanovertownship.com website, and you'll be able to access any governmental agencies within Hanover Township, so I think it's going to be phenomenal, very good. Commander Gallagher?
Just a couple quick ones. Saturday, May 10th, Employment Horizons Paper Shred Day, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Mayor, I joked with the school board when I encouraged them to go to, I think you're still holding the record on how much paper went into there last year.
I heard.
I just want to report also that on Friday, March 28th, we had a very successful Florham Park Roller Rink Hanover Youth Nights with the Substance Awareness Council. We're going to be doing another one Friday, May 2nd, grades 4th and 5th. It's a great night, a lot of fun. I recommend as many people as you want come out. We get a very good discount through the Recreation Department also. And lastly, we had a public hearing this past Tuesday night for the School and Park Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. It went very well. We're continuing to learn quite a bit. We're working closely with Transoptions. And on Monday morning, we did a 2.5-hour examination of Salem Drive School, all the driveways going in, the pathways going in and out, and the surrounding neighborhoods. And next week, we're going to go together with the same group, and we're going to take a tour of Mountain View Road School.
Oh, great.
I believe Committeeman Capola is going to report a little bit on the minutes from the other night, but that's it for me.
Very good, very good. was a very successful meeting, and I thank you, for that, Tom, with good participation, a lot of open dialogue, a lot of good ideas exchanged, and I'm sure they're all going to be taken into consideration in a final report that, when you're ready to prepare it for the Township Committee.
Mayor, you and I have spoke quite a bit about this, and I appreciate it being part of this team, but the one thing I heard since our meeting is how much people appreciate the way we're all working together on this with all the groups in town for the safety of our children. So thank you very much to the Township Committee too for all the support and working on this so hard with us. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. George?
A couple of things. First of all, as far as that safety meeting that we had Tuesday, I am preparing the minutes. We pretty much got a good idea of the concerns of the residents. I think it all went extremely well. I guess the one part that really surprised me more than anything was the number of residents who mentioned people going past school buses when they're stopped picking up our students. That really surprised me. I've yet to see it, but they, all these people cannot have been making up a story. If you're going down Whippany Road and there's a divider in between, you still have to stop. People may be under the impression they don't have to, but you do, regardless of the fact that there's a divider in between. So that was kind of surprising. But I am in the process of completing the minutes, at which time they will be submitted to our Township Committee, who have been extremely supportive, and I thank them for that. Along with those minutes, we've got some new projects that are coming along, and I think we'll be working out very well. Secondly, the Memorial Day services, I had a meeting last night with the Veterans Alliance. Again, breakfast at 7 to 8:15 at the Rec Center. Memorial services at Town Hall at 8:30 to 8:45. And then the parade starts at 9:30, and there will be transportation back and forth. One of the things that I'm sure Mr. Bruno will talk about is the Little League opening day, but the Knights will be cooking, again, 900 hot dogs. And I said this in the past, if you want to see 900 hot dogs disappear in about 10 minutes, stop over for the opening day on the 26th. I was also asked by Troop 155 to note that we have 3 Eagle Scouts, 3 Scout members who will be receiving their Eagle Scout Award on the 27th of this month at the American Legion. And lastly, a couple folks came up to me about the issue of the Comm Center, the state-of-the-art Morris County Comm Center, $25 million facility. Both fire companies have made extensive tours of the facility, and because of the issue with their fire communication system, they are going to take, they've considered it, and a fire prevention group unanimously approved a 1-year contract that they're looking at to go with the Morris County Comm Center for their fire dispatching. So that should be coming on shortly once they get all their paperwork completed. That's my report. Thank you.
Thanks, George, very good. Bob?
Yeah, the opening day, just to note, the date is April 26th, Little League opening day. The parade will begin over at Stony Brook Field at approximately 9:30, proceed over to Veterans Field, where the ceremonies will begin at about 10 o'clock, and then the Knights cooking 900 hot dogs. Just let's keep our fingers crossed for good weather. The following Saturday, May 3rd at 8:30, over at Bee Meadow Pond, we will have our fishing contest.
Oh.
Moved it back a month this year. Hopefully we'll get a little warmer weather. We'll be stocking some trout in there on Friday the 2nd. So get the fishing poles out, and I think there's going to be something like 600 trout put in. Last year we only caught about 30 fish, so there's some from last year left over that are hopefully much bigger. Maybe we can make a meal out of it. Also, pertaining to the fields, I mentioned briefly when Mr. Linfanti was speaking earlier, we have about 17 fields that we're trying to get ready for the spring. The winter was brutal, as we all know. We've got soccer teams, boys and girls lacrosse, baseball and softball, and again, about 17 fields to try to get in shape in a very short period of time. So we We thank everyone for their patience, and we invite you, if you are at a field and you see some debris on the field that the DPW hasn't gotten to yet, give us a call, let us know. We think we have a pretty good handle on getting everything ready to go by this weekend, of course, hoping that Mother Nature cooperates. The fields were open last weekend. Of course, we've gotten more rain. And we'll keep our fingers crossed once again for good weather. Just a quick note on opening day, the rain location rather, is Memorial Junior School. So the opening day ceremonies will take place, rain or shine.
Great, thank you, Bob. Very good. Bob mentioned the hard work that's going on and getting our fields ready for our opening day. Fields are being played on now, and but we've had some terrible rain. This winter has been awful, just absolutely awful. But I think it bears mentioning that we've improved and added on many fields to our township over the last year or two. Veterans Field is 2 fields, being the latest. And while we've grown the amount of fields that we have not added to our staff, our groundskeepers and recreation staff and the public works staff in order to maintain those. So these additional fields are still being maintained by the same complement of people that have been doing it over the years, and they're doing a yeoman job. As difficult as it was through the rain, as I left Town Hall Wednesday night after my Board of Health meeting, I saw the lights on and the game going on those fields, so they were drained and the mounds were cleared and everything was ready to go. So my compliments to all our staff and recreation and public works who were out there putting them together.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes,
one
sir.
question. I just want to make sure, there's a lot of people who are very eager to put out their new trash pails who have not been on the automated route yet. Is April 23rd, that Wednesday, still targeted, the expansion?
We were just a little apprehensive about putting that date out onto the website because the truck has not yet, in fact, been received. So it's imminent, it's on its way. We are looking at the Cedar Knolls section for the 23rd, and then the Whippany people who have received their cans will be the following day, Thursday the 24th. And we will make that public as soon as the truck is received and all the proper registration has been gone through. But that is our target date as of this evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's going to be tremendous when that second one comes online. And of course, in 2015, we hope to complete the fleet with a 3rd truck. And that means that our entire town will be, sanitation will be managed by a one person, but one armed vehicle that's tremendously efficient. So it's really great. And my compliments to Dr. George Van Orden, our health officer. And I just received, dated March 19th, from the state of New Jersey, Office of the Governor, the fact that our Dr. Van Orden has now been appointed to member of the Drinking Water Quality Institute for the state. His term of office commences immediately and runs till 2016. And I second the motion with the governor. You couldn't have put a better person on it than Dr. Van Orden, so we're very, very pleased with that, so thank you. Motion once again open to the public
So
for any
moved.
item not moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the floor once again is open. If anyone would like to address the Township Committee, you may do so from the podium, giving us your name and address for the record. Nothing, Carol? No? You sat through all those ordinances. You are tremendous. Okay. Motion to close that portion of the meeting. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion for adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Yeah.
Okay, it's got a little more committee business and then get our connectivity staff.
Good night, Carol. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks, Carol.
I guess we answered it all.